Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Good to be back with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
That's good.
It's
That's good.
Thursday,
Yeah.
so I have no energy, but we're gonna apparently talk about some stuff.
Yeah. Just a few little things to talk about.
Some trailers came out,
Yeah.
and so some that we want to talk about is The Marvels and Secret Invasion. I actually, right before we started, oh my God, this is not going to go well tonight for me. Yeah, The Marvels. I like the trailer. It looks cute.
Yeah.
I watched a few reactions to the trailer and people were complaining like, what's the movie? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and why all of a sudden are they switching? And I'm like, did you not watch the first 15 seconds?
Yeah.
It's very clear what happens.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's very clear what happened, and also if you watch Miss Marvel and saw what happened at the very end of that, or even if you just watched the cutscene from what happened at the end of Miss Marvel on Disney Plus last summer, you would know that they switched places. So, but yeah, I agree with you. It's a very cute trailer. Yeah, I think it's probably good that it's being released in the late fall instead of it being in the summer, because I just think it just needs to have its own space just to exist on its own, and not be in the glut of the summer blockbusters.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish this trailer would have been released later this year. It seems way too early. When I saw the November, I was like, okay, well, why am I we're
Yeah.
almost at the end of April? Like, this seems a bit premature. Another thing that I noticed people were talking about was, well, you would have to watch this and this in order to understand. And I'm like, how dumb does people think viewers are? Like, or just I think the trailer did a very good job at saying we have these three characters. They can all do something different. It doesn't matter if you haven't seen X show or Z show,
Yeah.
but there are stuff going there, like things are happening. I think that there's a lot of criticism for, oh, people are going to get lost with Marvel. Marvel is not writing like cinematic masterpieces by
Yeah.
any means.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're really not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not that complicated. And I think out of like the last few trailers I've seen, I understood more about what was going on in this plot than I did like leading up to Love and Thunder. So
Oh yeah. Definitely.
I just think that maybe there's too much criticism, probably because of the oversaturation of the MCU that has occurred. But yeah, I'm looking forward. I think this is going to be an upgrade from the previous Marvel, and I don't want to see another trailer.
Yeah. I agree. And I think to your point about Marvel, and not necessarily having to watch WandaVision or Miss Marvel. At this point, I mean, Marvel, and maybe it's a double-edged sword, which is, they do have the formula now, and you're right. I mean, they have, maybe if they go back to that tried and true, 3-act Marvel formula that folks have been familiar with, maybe, some people will grumble, like, it is too formulaic or whatever, but for general audiences, which, you know will lead to like the $1 billion like grosses at the box office and stuff, or even, or more, or north of 500 million, with the box office. It's the general audience people who are like, what, driving that, and also some just repeat viewing. So, and I think I think, to your point, before we had the glut of like streaming content on Disney Plus, we, Marvel is doing just fine, and I think I think you made a good point that things are got to a place of oversaturation, and they're slowing it down because they recognize that maybe too much is coming at once.
Maybe, but it's funny that you bring up formula because the most formulaic trailer did come out this week also.
Yeah.
Which was Blue Beetle.
Yeah, but actually,
superhero movies. Like, don't get me wrong. I think the Blue Beetle trailer perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very much like, oh, okay, so you're gonna tell me the exact origin story within the span of 2 minutes. Why do I have to see the movie? I think that what we're noticing with the MCU is that they had a very good formula for their origin stories. They still have not perfected the sequel. They have not perfected. Now that we have these characters, we don't have to go through like, oh, they get their powers and then this happens and then they learn to fight again. No, now you have to kind of tell a continuation story. Okay, well, what happens next?
Yeah.
And maybe it's because with the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 main characters we had, they had a trajectory. And with a lot of these newer characters like Ant-Man, Marvel, or maybe even Black Panther, if you want to argue that, the trajectory it's still trying to be perfected. I think at the end of the day, though, to your point about general audiences, they're still getting our money because this is perfectly like both Blue Beetle and the Marvels very catered to families.
Yeah.
Character. So I think it's going to I think both are going to do well. Blue Beetle just might not do as well because nobody trusts the DC anymore.
No, I disagree with you there. I think the Blue Beetle actually, I think it's going to do better than people expect. I think it's relative for many people. It's a newer character, yes, but I mean, I think with Sholo and the Cobra Kai connection, and I think you're going to get a lot of folks who really like him as Miguel and Cobra Kai who are going to come watch that film. I mean, and the cool thing of that with that trailer, I really enjoyed it in the sense that it was a magnetism, and Jaime Reyes, the character who he's playing, really just popped. I mean, it just felt fresh, and whereas like to contrast that with Black Adam. I mean, with Black Adam, I never one, it was like anti-hero. 2, I just felt like I'm just watching a variation of The Rock do his thing, and it was not one of those things where it was a character, it wasn't one of the big 3 or whatever that I just felt like I had to go see it in the theater. Shazam, I don't know what the hell they were doing as far as their marketing with that. I mean, that is just but with Blue Beetle, it just felt fresh. It felt different, and for me, I didn't find it formulaic at all. I was like, oh, this is a film I'm like, I will go to the theater to see it. Whereas with Shazam and Black Adam and some of the other DC entries lately, I've just kind of like, oh, I'll just catch it on HBO Max or or whatever the hell they're calling it now.
Right. I would say that I'll catch it on the CW because it does look like a CW show to me.
Well, I think it's your DC bias against.
No. It really, like, at the end of the day, I'm just like this. And I mean, to your point about the main actor, Shiloh, he did good. He just reminds me like a Grant Gustin, Stephen Mell. I don't know. Like, I don't think I really have ever gotten upset other than the Raw casting, about any of DC's casting per se, but it's just always, yeah, I don't know. We'll see, or you'll see, because you're gonna, yeah, I don't know if you can get me to go see that in theaters. But something you will not have to get me to see in theaters, because it will be on Disney Plus, is Secret Invasion, which we got the full trailer. So my question coming out of trailer looks fine. Trailer meets expectations, things I've heard going into the trailer. My question is, where is Secret Invasion in the timeline with the Marvels? Just because the trailer is very focused on Nick Fury. Like, this is pretty much Nick Fury : then Secret Invasion.
Yeah. That's a good question. I am not sure. Yeah.
So I think that it's interesting to get both of these trailers coming out within relative time of one another. It's hard, because I would hope that this is again why the Marvels trailer was dropped way too early, because if Secret Invasion predates the Marvels, then a lot of your stakes that are wrapped up in Fury, like, you don't want him walking around in the Marvels.
Yeah.
But then again, Secret Invasion is with Skrulls, so you never know what they'll pull. You don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't. And I probably heard it somewhere, but I can't. I just can't recall right off the top of my head now, where they fall timeline wise. I mean, I would think, given the way the release dates are structured, I would. It seems that it would seem that the Marvels is after the events of Secret Invasion, but I'll have to go back and confirm that.
Remember the time when we could talk trailers and just like, okay, so when are they going to be released? Okay, this is the release date schedule. Now we're like, okay, so this is released here, but then it falls in the timeline of the universe. I mean, that's even my question after watching the Ahsoka trailer and this past week's episode of Mandalorian. I'm like, okay, so Ahsoka, that occurs after Mandalorian, right? Or is it concurrent?
Concurrent.
They're concurrent.
All in the. Okay. Yeah. So Ahsoka, Mandalorian, the new show, Skeleton Crew, all these things are in the New Republic period.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. It was Star Wars Celebration. Ahsoka trailer was badass. Really liked it, and it just reminded me that some of the best episodes of Mandalorian featured Ahsoka. So, all that being said, I kind of wish I didn't see it going into this week's episode of Mandalorian. I mean, on one hand, it was like, oh, I understand a little bit more about this context because I watched a very cool trailer. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'm just like, okay, so this freaking necromancer project seems to work. Granted, we don't know if that's about Thrawn or Palpatine, but whatever. Mm. We'll get there. But all that being said, it's interesting that it's concurrent.
Yeah. So
like day-to-day concurrent.
Well, it clearly. So Mandalorian is happening. Well, season 3 of Mandalorian is happening. As far as the events of the trailer, Ahsoka definitely happens. Like, it's in the same time. It's in the time period, but Thrawn clearly hasn't shown up yet. Which by the time we get to Ahsoka, he will be back. Actually, I'm thinking, and not to, and I know we'll get into Mando here in a minute. But it would not surprise me if Thrawn shows up in the finale next week on Mando. Yeah,
I mean, they already did Gideon, so they might as well. They've already revealed it with Ahsoka trailer.
Yeah, exactly.
Another
No,
thing,
I guess, yeah. I mean,
why feel that in a trailer? I'm not yelling at you, Will. I'm just
yeah,
raising my voice,
yeah.
thinking that there's someone in entertainment who can hear me all the way from Alaska. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's kind of, it's one of those things. It's just like, the how they like plan things as far as airing, and how they sometimes step on themselves, or not do anything to benefit their product. Like, for example, going back to DC for a second, basically like saying, oh yeah, we're wiping the slate, and then, yeah, but we still have 4 more films in this current universe that still needs to, like, still needs to be released. But
Please.
yeah, but since we are talking about Star Wars Celebration, and with Thrawn, Lars Mikkelsen, who did the voice work for the character in Star Wars Rebels, is also going to be playing the character in live action. Basically, Star Wars Rebels fans were just basically feasting this past weekend with all the news. From that, of course, we saw Hera, who was also from Rebels, in live action, in the Ashoka trailer. Huang, who is from Clone Wars, was the droid there at the end, and clearly the Timothy Zahn's books, The Heir to the Empire, definitely, I think, are, Filoni's definitely seems to be borrowing heavily from that book, with the Ashoka series coming up. So we have that from the weekend. And also, another thing related to Ahsoka is they did kind of hint at a potential season 2. So, but I don't know how that's going to job, given that we got 3 films coming up, and one of the 3 films is going to be Filoni's film to sort of wrap up everything in the Mando New Republic universe, top part of the universe. But so all these shows, we got Skeleton Crew, Ashoka, Mandalorian. Filoni is the caretaker of the New Republic, and there were 3 films announced that are clearly a go. They're not like Rogue Squadron, where they are in development and will be made. I think, of course, the big one was Daisy Ridley getting returning to the Star Wars universe, and will be leading a film set 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker, to involved in rebuilding the Jedi Order. And let's see, there was James Mangold is going to do a film in the Dawn of the Jedi era, which is like 20, basically thousands of years before the Skywalker saga. So basically, at Star Wars Celebration, they unveiled the Star Wars timeline, I guess, or like, for lack for lack of a better term, phases like we have in MCU, uh, going from the Dawn of the Jedi to the new order that Rey will be building, over like a 25,000 year, span of years in the Star Wars universe. Other news from the event, Andor season 2 has had a little in celebration trailer that folks got to see, and Andy Serkis will be returning as Kino Roy, and they're looking at it coming out in August of next year. Tales of the Jedi Visions both got a second season, and The Bad Batch will be returning for a third and final season. Taika's film is still in development, as well as the Lando Calrissian show. I guess it's still in development. And last, Star Wars Celebration will return in 2025, so they're skipping a year, but it'll be in Japan. So if you ever wanted to visit Japan and you're a Star Wars fan, here's your opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot that happened last weekend. Yeah, with Celebration, it was definitely. But like I said, I mean, Star Wars Rebels fans were definitely like feasting with all the things that's been coming out. Not only with the Ahsoka trailer, but also with the Mandalorian this week too.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of how much the Rebels have been, or the Clone Wars, or whatever. So I've kind of been waiting for you to ask this question because you put this on the rundown, but I feel like you want me to. So you had put up a question about, has the Star Wars universe gotten too big for the casual fan to follow? To follow how?
Well, I was thinking about a discussion that we had on our last recording about how, like, when we were discussing Star Trek,
Right.
and also even some of our discussions we were just having this evening with the Marvel universe. In that, is it to a place where it's getting inaccessible for someone to on ramp in the middle of this journey? Because Star Wars now, you have in real, as far as, like, it's been around since, like, for 40 plus years now, when you consider that New Hope premiered in 77, and the MCU has like 30, almost 40 films and TV shows now. And of course, Star Trek has been around 55, plus years. Is it, and it's thinking about things as far as the Mandalorian this season, where if you haven't watched, like, for example, Clone Wars or Rebels, or some of the lore and some of the things you may miss out on, especially given that it has, viewership of the Mandalorian this season has dropped some compared to the first two seasons. So I was just putting it out there to you as someone, when we discussed this before, what were your thoughts on that? And I'd like to hear from our viewers as well, and listeners as well. Do they feel like it's just hard to, like, keep track of all these various things if you have, and does it take away from the experience if you haven't watched some of these shows or movies?
So, okay, I'm just gonna do the comparison between Picard, or Star Trek, and Star Wars, because I think it's interesting, especially given the two episodes that we're going to discuss, one from each, tonight. And I think that in both cases, why these franchises continue to go on is because they're not necessarily directed for the general audience. They're actually more targeted for fans who are already following things. They might pick up, like with a movie drop or a TV show, pick up some fans who will then enjoy the story so much they'll go back and watch a lot of the old stuff and then start to make their connections. But it's not, I don't get the sense that, I don't want to say this, but I kind of do because I think it's hilarious. But, like, Star Wars has kind of always been up its own ass with its lore. Like, it's mythology. And the people, like, we're talking about Filoni. Mm-hmm. He is such a geek about this. And so he doesn't care if I'm like, I barely remember 5 characters' names and you're going to try to inundate me. Like, that just makes me resist more personally. But I don't think, as someone who, I'll be honest, I only watch these shows because Will makes me. What
are we doing here?
I only watch these shows because we talk about genre TV on this. I get it. And this is genre TV. And I don't think that people, if the season has is well written,
Mhm.
if the story itself, like, separate the story from the nostalgia, from the tie-ins, from the lore,
Mhm.
if the story at the end of the day is strong, anybody who sits down and watches it will be like, this is a really good story.
Mhm.
And I think what you might be noticing, and where some of this fear is coming from, is because, I'll be honest, I think probably this week's episode of Mandalorian was probably arguably one of the best episodes in the entire series.
Mhm.
That fell apart about halfway through because it got way too Star Wars. It got way too Star Warsy for me, where I'm like, oh my God, not even Giancarlo can save this. It's bad. But at the end of the day, like, it's not catered to me, and I understand that. It's
Mhm.
catered to people who have loved Star Wars or have fallen in love with Star Wars. So
Mm.
I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question, Paul, but
yeah. I mean, it's not a right or wrong. It's truly like opinion because, because to your point, this week was one of those weeks where I was just like at like uh, peak feasting as far as geekdom. Because I'm that fan, like that you were describing, who is one who, I'm just predisposed to like all, to this genre. And, and that I do have a passion for the IP, with both of these franchises, and both Star Wars and Star Trek. And so I would be the type who would, be more like, who does do all the tie-ins and follow that kind of stuff. But then I was talking to my wife about this very thing, because, like, to another big franchise that has a spanning bit of stories and shows and movies now, the MCU, and and how accessible, like, they're, like you said, to your point about story, like, for example, she will watch a Black Panther and
right.
enjoy it because the story is really good. Same with Miss Marvel, and not really care that she hasn't seen like all the other 20 or however many MCU films. It's like, oh, I just really enjoy these particular characters. I watch it, I move on. Me,
Right.
on the other hand, I've got to, like, oh, I'm soaking up, all the material, and it's like, okay, when does this particular show drop, and how does this tie to that, and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I think that's an example of, like, and you, like you were saying, like Star Wars, you were really enjoying the show, this week's episode of Mando, and then it, like, went down that path of, like, probably some things that were related back to Clone Wars, or
Where
Rebels, or
do you
something else.
think where do you
Yeah.
think it went off the rails for me? Because I don't think that you're not alluding to where it went off the rails.
Um, I think, was it the beginning with the Shadow Council?
No, that was the best scene. I actually stopped what I was doing and actually watched that. And
Okay.
not just because Giancarlo can, like,
So
act his ass
Giancarlo,
off.
yeah.
No,
Well,
no. See, no, I haven't watched Clone Wars, Rebels, that stuff. But I've listened enough people talk about it where I know names. I've known Ahsoka's name for what feels like 10 years.
yeah.
Ezra, Sabine, all of that. I know names. And I actually have heard of the event, A Night of a Thousand Tears, before. So it wasn't then that, like, I was completely lost. It fell off the third act with just why, like, this whole time we're like, oh, Gideon is back.
Hmm.
And then like it's through the penultimate episode, and then he managed to get to get Din Djarin separate. I don't know. It just was a very I don't know, old movie mustache twirly villain
Okay.
moment, and I'm like, what the fuck are we watching here,
Yeah.
people? What happened?
Yeah.
Um,
But
and the more I think about this episode, the more I just was like, you could have had this play out in maybe 2 episodes and it work a lot better and not feel so rushed.
mm,
Um, but yeah, that's actually where it fell apart for me.
okay. Well, I mean, I think that's more of a issue of, like you were saying, about storytelling more so than the universe itself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard for me to separate, I guess, then the shows from the universe itself, just because this show is so entangled in its lore to the
Mhm.
point where Din Djarin is only a minor piece of this whole story. I mean, the better parts of this episode was actually related back to what we saw a few weeks ago with the clone doctor guy.
Mm.
Um, and tying that in, which we know relates to Andor. Um, to your point about the MCU, though, when you were talking about your wife, and how she's drawn to certain characters. Well, that's because I think the MCU has done a good job and to have very character-driven
Mm.
stories to
Mm.
where no, you don't have to follow every character, but everyone identifies with at least one. So here's 10.
Yeah.
And then take your pick, especially if you don't have the time or the desire to follow all 10 origin stories.
True.
Like pick one and you're still in, or you
Yeah.
still have that connection. You still have your favorite child.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's kind of lacking with Star Wars. Because they had their 3 characters, Luke, Leia, and Han, in the first movie, and then the further we get away from them, it's like it's that whole Star Wars flaw thing. It's like it always goes back to Luke. It's always a Skywalker thing.
Yeah.
Oh, why are they all like they have yet to really be able to expand it beyond those stories. And so
Yeah.
that's why when you mentioned the Ray, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Take it from Star Wars.
You're right, because even like let's talk about this week's episode with the Mandalorian, because you make a good point about, with Gideon, with Giancarlo, and the whole secret council, which was the strongest part of the episode, and probably I agree. I mean, but again, to your point about everything tying back to the Skywalker saga and the drama, they're having, so in this show, which originally the first 2 seasons was really even though we had Grogu, who was, clearly Jedi, Force sensitive, but the stories that they were telling with Mando was their journey, and they were, they were focusing on their story and things that were happening to them, and it wasn't like wrapped up in the larger, like, it was very local, whereas now this third season, especially the way it has unfolded, is now getting back into the bigger universe, because of all the retconning they're doing and filling in the gaps of, like, what happened to lead to the First Order, to make sense of the future trilogies, the third, the third trilogy, and so now, instead of, focusing just on Din and Grogu and their story, now we're having the Mandalorian, like, all clear, doing trying to reclaim the world. We have Gideon having his cloning operation. We have Hux and all that, trying to, have their operation to create, bring back Palpatine and all that. So again, it all flows back to the Skywalkers again.
Oh, I don't think that Gideon wants to bring back.
I don't think no.
Yeah, I
no,
think this whole thing is a ploy for power by Gideon.
Yeah, well, I think if anything, he's trying to maybe giving Persian speech in that episode about cloning organs and those kind of things. I'm thinking Gideon's trying to figure out how to extend his life.
Maybe. I mean, that seems to be like they get to a certain peak position and then they're just all about like, I want to live forever. I want to be a god. Oh my God, I've seen this story 20 times. Yeah, so trying to think about what something you said that was interesting. Yeah, and we've only talked about this or made this point every episode discussion of The Mandalorian this season, is that they made the bad mistake of Boba Fett and then undoing what they did at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Because seasons 1 and 2, I think are is a very well-defined arc with Din Djarin and Grogu. But then they undid it and they don't know how to, it's like, oh, we weren't intending to undo it, but then we felt like we had to because we need to sell more Grogu toys. So now we're stuck what to do next. Because really, in my opinion, Din Djarin, like there needs to, he's just walking around like, I don't know what he's doing these days. Bo-Katan has more of an arc this season than Din Djarin.
Yeah.
And Grogu is just cute and he's just there to be cute. And I don't know where this is headed. And something that I was thinking about at the end of this is I kind of hope that anyway, I'm going to raise my question first before answering it. But I think that I wonder if Mandalorian is actually, the series is actually headed towards a dark ending. Because if it really is to show the events that led up to the rise of the New Order, or the New Order, whatever they're called, then it shouldn't end with a victory. Like, Mandalore shouldn't be reclaimed.
Nope.
So I think the writers are writing themselves into a very tricky position that I don't know even if they get out of it, I don't think it'll be satisfactory, because I have a feeling it'll be very much like a happy ending and be like, but then 5 years later, everything fell apart. But
yeah. That's a good point. I mean, do they have the guts to like do that Empire Strikes Back type of ending where it's like everything's dark and our heroes are lost because I mean, the way, especially the way this season has been trending, and at the end here now we see all these warlords in the Shadow Council.
Well, we see the guards who were in The Last Jedi, like a little tease of those. Like, we're seeing things that are in the sequel trilogy. So it's just, it'll be interesting to really understand how Din Djarin ties in to the fall of the New Republic. But it will be a fall, because in timeline, that is the order.
Yeah, that is.
That's the sequence of events, okay?
Yeah. And so with Filoni's film, like whenever they do tie up the New Republic timeline, will that basically it'll be a dark film because I mean, you're right. I mean, they can't like end it on a happy note. I mean, so but
they will. That they're not that gutsy.
I would be,
because
Yeah.
because here's the thing.
Yeah.
If they ended, it's not like it's not like God, what is the second Star Wars film called? I'm tired.
Empire Strikes Back? Or?
I'm tired. Like, it's not, oh, we will fix everything in the sequel. No, I'm talking series ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there is no, oh, and then this happens. It's like, no, there's another trilogy, okay? Han Solo gets killed by his own son. Spoiler.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I feel like we're did any other thoughts about Mandalorian?
Just one thing that you had noted that did want to bring up with the decisions to change the focus to Bo-Katan. I mean, and the showrunner, it is an intentional thing. I mean, they've even said, I mean, that that the Mandalorian now doesn't necessarily only apply to Din. It really is about all the Mandalorian. So so we are seeing that evolution in this show to be bigger than just start to just Bo and just Din and Grogu.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it definitely feels like a conscious decision.
Yeah.
And I think one that was probably more Filoni than Favreau. I am so like, names that I said 5 minutes ago are starting to escape me. Like, this is not good. And on that note, I think it's a sign to let you take over, where you can just gloat and gush about the latest episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, definitely it's been a week where I've been feasting as far as a fan, because we got the penultimate episode of Star Trek Picard Vox, and I guess I was also very excited too, because my theory spiraling did indeed even though I called Locutus and that was the ultimate big bad, and I have to say this episode was, I felt overall that it was very satisfactory. Now, granted, it had a few little, obviously some nits. I mean, there's never a perfect show, but the way that this season has transpired and getting to the penultimate episode where we do learn that it is indeed the Borg and the Changeling working together, I thought that was very fitting, given that this was clearly the end of, we're coming to the end of the Next Generation crew, and to giving them a proper send off that they didn't get before. And if you're going to do that, having the Borg, who's and getting into this whole thing with legacy and all that, what it made sense to me that it ended up being not the power race and not some of these other things that people were theorizing about, that it really was Locutus that Jean-Luc passed, and the Borg that they passed on to Jack. And so but also but also I thought it was very smart that they used the founders from Deep Space Nine and the Dominion to also be I guess foot soldiers for the Borg to assimilate Starfleet and the Federation. So I thought that was a very satisfying and convincing resolution to where we're going. And and this episode had it all. I mean, it clearly had the high moment of seeing the Enterprise D, and I mean, it was just really a well earned climax at the end of this episode, and we still have one more left. So I'll be very curious. I'm very curious to see how things sort of how they
how the old people resolve it.
Because it's like because the next episode title is The Last Generation. So so
why again was it only 45 and up who weren't infected?
25 and up. So
oh my God.
25 and below were so basically the prefrontal cortex.
It's not
the
fully
brain.
developed. Got it.
Yeah. So
okay. I was just like, for some reason I had it in my mind 45, and I missed the part where they talked to. I didn't. Now that you said that, I was like, oh, that's why they were talking about that. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But that just makes me feel really old. I'm like 25 and people are like, oh, the old people. I mean, yeah. Like 20. And also, that's kind of alarming. How many youngins are running around in these spacecraft?
Yeah.
You're letting someone without a fully developed frontal cortex just fly off into space. This is why the Borg can easily manipulate. You did it to yourselves. Early recruiting should not occur.
Pretty much. Yeah. I was, and that was so to be like completely like, not be all fanboy here, but to quibble. That was when I was watching an episode, I was like, damn, this was just like story convenience here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, okay, I get where they're going from. They had to basically write it in a way that we would get our 7 principal characters on Enterprise D. So we'll just like come up with this contrivance of like 25 to be the arbitrary line to able to where the Borg DNA rewrite can infect the younger folks. So, I'll give them that.
Yeah, they definitely did, but yeah, the formed cortex, like that's a good scientific justification.
Yeah.
I think even though logically, like, you didn't even have to make it 25, like clearly you could have made it 45, 50. Like, have you seen this guy? They talked about how long they've been, like, it's been 30 plus years. I'm like, they've been doing this longer than I've been alive. So I think you're fine.
They have actually, because the show premiered in 87. So.
Yeah, seriously. So, but yeah, we actually were unable to record last week. And so technically we are 2 episodes behind, but now fully caught up on this season. I don't know what happened, but last week's episode I totally watched, but I couldn't retain anything that actually occurred in that episode. And this week's episode I just felt a bit rushed, where I couldn't actually have it on and pick up more things. And this goes back to where we kind of started the show with this whole talk about lore overtaking the story and everything. I don't necessarily think it's lore with Star Trek. It's just that this is really a letter to the fans.
Yeah.
They don't care about picking up new fans. No, this is not. This is nostalgic, and it's really good nostalgia. Because you would tell me if you're just like, oh my God, this is not good. Because we've watched some things where it's just like, okay, you can hide the Easter eggs a little bit, you can disclose, but from what I hear from you and from others who are diehard Trekkies, like, this is a perfect farewell letter. Which I'm going to laugh in 5 years if they just put out something else and be like, was it goodbye? Is this the last goodbye? They've revived I've learned this season they've revived Picard like 3 times already. So
Yeah.
I still think if it's a true goodbye, he should die next episode. Just saying. His DNA literally led to the Borg takeover. This man should not be alive.
Yeah. But you're right, though. Well, to your point about is this really the end? Because they were already, there's already a campaign, Star Trek Legacy, to have a spinoff with some of the characters from the show, which I will say I was definitely. It definitely like a low note for me on the episode too was Shaw getting killed. I mean, I get it. Someone had to have make the sacrifice. Again, we always talk about stakes and all. So it made sense in the sense that he would be the one that would buy it. He's had a lot of close calls throughout the season. Even in the last episode, he told Seven she should have blown the hatch whenever he and Vadic were on the turbo shaft. But so that was a low because I really like Captain Shaw. I mean, he's definitely of the new Trek, especially and really as far as the we've now together watched Star Trek Picard all 3 seasons together now.
Yes, we have.
And him and Girardi are like the 2 characters that really stand out in a positive way for me in this new series. And I hate that both of them are no longer going to be able to come back. Well, I guess Girardi could, but she'll be Girardi Borg.
Yeah, she will. Fun fact that I've actually been sitting on for at least 3 episodes of Picard. It took me the first few episodes to be like, wait a second, why does Jack Crusher, the actor, seem so familiar? And it's because he was in the latest season of You. Okay?
Yes, I was wondering we were going to bring that up.
Oh my God. He plays a really different character, and I feel like they were shot like years apart.
Yeah.
Because he looks younger in Picard. And he looked older in You, and there's an accent, but like, and he's not the same actor from Netflix's Night Agent, is he? Because he kind of looks. Hold on.
I want to say I've seen Night Agent mentioned. I mean, was it with him or was it with someone else recently?
My dad loved Night Agent. I have yet to watch a single episode. But when my dad actually watches the series to the point where he's watching it without my mom, I'm like, what happened? Okay, who is this guy? I don't think it's the same one.
It's Villiers, yeah.
No, it's not. It's not. Okay, they just look eerily similar. So yeah, I found that to be funny because he plays a very pivotal character in You. But similar the more I think about it between him and Jack Crusher. So but we will be wrapping up. Will, what are you gonna do? We're gonna wrap up both
of
the space shows next week. Like
yeah, I know. I'm gonna be at a loss. I tell you, it's just like because I mean clearly Star Trek Picard I didn't realize because Star Trek Deep Space Nine is still my favorite Star Trek series, but I'm in the generation where in my early years I watched the reruns of the original series with Kirk and Spock and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Next generation, was my teens and my 20s, and while I was and really was like, I guess my generation's Trek, as far as one that really that I own as far as my own real time. And I think to your point that you were saying how there's a good way to do nostalgia and fan service, and that actually and it is a bad way. And this season, start to finish, has consistently been. Even though I will say I did get frustrated at how long they were dragging out what the hell was going on with Jack. I did, in full disclosure. But at the same time, whenever I got to the scene where they went back to Hangar 12, and it was the Enterprise D, which, I knew whenever they mentioned that a few episodes back, I was like, I know it's going to be the Enterprise D. This is when you're going to roll it out. But the way that they constructed this season, I just felt that as a fan, and also it just in a way they utilized good storytelling to what you said before. It was a very well earned organic moment for me, and it just got great payoff where I was just like sitting there grinning, tears in my eyes too of joy, seeing that ship, on the screen, because that was, that's one of those like formative things that you grow up with, like a old song that's like, fond, it brings back fond memories and stuff. And that's what I felt whenever I was watching the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll have to return to the question of what is your favorite series like in a few years, because I think it's hard to say favorite, even when you're talking about a show's seasons, like it all will go back to rewatchability,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we might actually have to do it, Will. We might actually have to sit down, because we keep hearing things about this show called Gotham Knights. We might actually have to end up watching that.
I'm here. Yeah, I know. I was thinking that this week too. It seems that there's been some positive buzz about this thing, and we may have to talk offline about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a fair amount of episodes of the final season of Succession.
I was about that.
No. Okay, listeners, if you watch Succession, have any interest in Succession and any watching it, please stop listening to us all now, because Will already knows what happens, and I'm about to go on a full-fledged rant that will be very fucking spoilerly. So thank you for listening to us. Okay, I am so pissed off. I thought about this even after putting on the rundown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am pissed off, not because of the episode, not because of what happens, but because the beauty of the fucking episode, you can only appreciate if you don't know what happens. I fully believe that. Like 100%. I don't watch trailers. And honestly, from what I understand, most viewers who do watch trailers didn't know that going into the episode that is about Connor's wedding, you would have Roy die. Like, no one knew that. And the way they exit, there was no death scene. So about 15 minutes into the episode, suddenly there's a phone call from an airplane with Tom, and he's like, your dad is well, he's very, very sick. And you're like, wait, what? And everyone is acting so weird there that for the first time, I'm like, as a viewer, like, oh, he's not dead. Like, I am actually experiencing the emotional grief of the Roy children who are just like, what? We hate our father, but what do you mean they are doing chest compressions? Like, what is you don't know if he can hear me, but I have to talk to him all of a sudden. What do I say? Like, holy fuck. No. Like, it pains me to know people know what happens, because I maybe, like, I'm sure it'll hit you. Like, if you watch the episode, because it is arguably a directorial, a writing, and an acting master class. Like, it is insane And I don't think it's going to get any Emmys because freaking episode 3 of The Last of Us is going to get all the Emmys. I have this feeling. I'm just like, oh my God, but damn. Like, and I listened to the director talk about this episode.
Yeah.
And he was explaining how they actually they did about 5 takes of the longest scene, which is 28 pages or something, about a 28-minute scene in one take. And he explained because they shoot on film how they were able to do that. And he's like, majority of it ended up in the final cut. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you just put these characters through hell. And to be in it, oh my God, this episode was just, yeah. It's a very, I've watched a lot of TV. I've seen a lot of deaths, but I've never to actually have them show and it's also usually in TV, the central characters are around the character who dies. Like they're in the event, right? No, there's a separation. There's a separation because they're on the phone and they're like, what's happening? What is going on? And which is something that people actually experience all the time, especially when we were in lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm very proud of the show because another thing that we're talking episode 3, I predicted he would die second to last episode. But no, we're episode 3, and now we get to unfold the actual succession that occurs. Yeah. And even in they did also just didn't end it that way. They actually showed okay, so yeah, they did some grieving, but now they have to do a press conference because yes, their father died. But he's also the head of this multi-million-dollar corporation. So there's this whole, it's like probably the perfect episode of Succession. It's just, my God. And the moment you said I think I know what happens, I'm like, fuck. Because I wish that you could go back in time and forget it, because I honestly believe there's nothing like experiencing that episode without having an ounce or even a clue of knowing what's going to happen. I'm so glad I got to experience it that way, because I honestly don't know if I would be as boisterous about it if I had a sense oh, okay, I know what's going to happen. But yeah, damn.
Yeah, I've been dying to hear what you thought about that episode this week, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, I cannot wait to hear your. So I was like, whenever you said when you put on the rundown non-spoiler, I was like, damn it, come on, give spoilers. I want to hear her full opinion.
It's just it's you are so caught off guard, because why the heck would you think they would kill him in the 3rd episode of the final? It's so random.
That's pretty bold. I have to say, when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. I know it's the final season.
Right.
But because thinking for example, House of the Dragon, they poor Viserys, they made he made it to what, episode 8 or whatever. We still had so as far as it's family dynamics and successions and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a bold choice. But to your point, I mean, it is the story. The show is called Succession, and now the balance of the series is going to deal with the very thing that how his dad, the fallout from his passing.
Yeah. And it's also interesting to think about some of his actions in the first 2 episodes, because I think there were kind of some hints. Looking retrospectively, there were some hints that he even knew he, like, as a character who's aging, like, he isn't going to be around, and he's like in the worst place with his children. His children all hate him. But then the moment, like, and that's the beauty of Succession, like, there's this business side and then there's the family side, and they walk the line so beautifully. But yeah, like, and Tom McFadden, who won the Emmy last year for Best Supporting Actor, like, this probably will get him a second one. Like, his performance in this episode alone. Arguably, you could say that about any cast member, but his character had a very interesting role. So because he was on the plane.
Yeah.
But he's also, like, it's so well crafted. But yeah, I just it's so good. Yeah. But anyways, so well, that is it for us tonight. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK on Twitter.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBelmont. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd, friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.cnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.